Brownsville will now be called to order. If everyone will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hinojosa, would you lead us?
Place your hands over your heart. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Next order of business is oath of office, statement of appointment. Is that for Mrs. Loya?
Yes, Ms. Erica Espinosa Rodriguez is from our department, and so she will be assisting Ms. Loya.
Very good.
I, Maria Alicia Loya, do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties as a member of the Board of Adjustment of the City of Brownsville, Cameron County of the State of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God. I, Maria Alicia Loya, do solemnly affirm that I will not directly or indirectly paid, offered, and promised to pay, contributed, or promised to contribute any money or thing of value, or promise any public office or employment as a reward to secure my appointment or confirmation thereof, so help me God.
Very good. Congratulations, Mrs. Loya, and welcome back.
Thank
And
you.
for the audience members, Mrs. Loya is not new to our board. She just got reappointed, so she's being sworn in for her next term, but she is an experienced board member. And she's just sitting down by the city attorney tonight because of a physical injury that's preventing her from making it up the steps. But she'll be one of the board members you'll be addressing tonight.
Thank you.
So let's see. So next on the agenda, we have public comment. To let the audience know, for any cases that you all are here for specifically, each of those cases will be a public hearing, and you'll have an opportunity to speak to any of those as we listen to each case. The public comment session we've got right now is for any other business that doesn't include a public hearing. So for example, tonight we've got discussion and possible action to set training date for Board of Adjustment members, and discussion and possible action to establish an attendance policy for Board of Adjustment members as established by the Board Appointment Policy approved by the Brownsville City Commission on October 2nd, 2018. So since neither one of those items has a public hearing associated with them, if anyone is here to speak to either of those items, now's your opportunity to do so. I didn't think so. Just had to make sure. Very good. Next item is approval of the minutes of August 7th, 2019. Did you guys have a chance to review minutes?
Yes, sir. I have no
Any
corrections.
additions or corrections?
No, Mr. Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vanderford, second by Mr. Slackman. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, public hearing and action, case 2019-019-V.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Case number 2019-19-B, public hearing and action to consider a variance from Chapter 348, Article 5, Section 348-814, lot width, to allow a 46.19 feet wide residential lot at a 1 acre tract of land in Block 21, Chicago Garden subdivision located at 5015 Bowie Road, as requested by Jessica Barrientos. Section 348-814, lot width in a G area district, lot width shall be as follows. The minimum average width of the lot shall be 50 feet. Variance is for 3.81 feet. This is an aerial of the property. It's a 200-foot radius. This is a site plan of the property in question. photos. Just a short video of the existing conditions. Grounds for granting a variance: the Board of Adjustments may grant a variance if the variance is not contrary to the public interest, is due to special conditions, and is also in accordance with the spirit of the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustments may not grant a variance for financial hardship nor hardship that is personal as to the landowner. Staff recommendation: staff supports granting the variance request to allow a 46.19 feet wide residential lot.
Very good. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this case, either for or against? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, you've never opened public hearing.
Public hearing is now open. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Barrientos.
Hello, Ms. Barrientos.
I just came here so I could build my home here, and I know I need you guys' permission. It's just a 46.19 and it's required for a 50. But on my side plan, the plan that I have for my home, it's about 38. So we will cover it. I mean, there's nothing, I don't think I have it here, but I don't know if they put the plan, the home plan here.
Now, we saw that in our packets.
Okay, so, I mean, it's just you guys that say, yes, you can build your home. That's what
Very
I'm waiting
good.
for.
Any questions for the applicant, gentlemen or ladies?
I have no questions.
Very good. We'll call you back up if we need anything else. Is there anyone else in the audience who's here to speak on this case, for or against?
I move that we close public comment.
There's a motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Vanderford. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hinojosa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Ochoa,
Yes, sir.
the ordinance is 50.
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't allow a width less than 50 that you know of? I know city and staff recommends to approve it, but does anything pop up that would suggest that there's a bad idea?
Not really. They're already presenting a site plan for the proposed house, and it's gonna comply with the required setback for that same area district. So, in my opinion, no.
This is an old platted
Correct.
area, is it not?
I believe it's not platted. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not 100% sure. But
But as you can see, there's a home that's right there that it's
We've already,
just trash. I mean,
I'm sorry, we've already closed public hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's all right, Ms. Barrientos.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa.
Any other questions?
I move that we approve the variance as printed.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vanderford, second by Mr. Slackman to approve. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
case number 2019-20-V, public hearing and action to consider a variance from Chapter 320, Article 2, Sidewalk Facilities, to exempt the property from right-of-way sidewalk along Abel Longoria Street for Lot 10, Block 1, Abel Longoria subdivision, located at 6960 Abel Longoria Street, as requested by Anwar Hobby. Article 2, Sidewalk Facilities, Section 320-37, subsection A2, sidewalk shall be 4 feet in width and located adjacent and parallel to the property line. Subsection A3, if physical constraints require sidewalks to be placed against the back of the curb, the width of the sidewalk shall be increased to a minimum of 5 feet. This is an aerial of the property, 200 feet radius. This is a site plan from the construction that has been done at this location, at this property. photos, same property. Video. It's a short video of the existing conditions. As you can see, recently they have cleaned the ditch, and grounds for granting a variance, the Board of Adjustments may grant a variance if it is not contrary to the public interest, is due to special conditions, and is in accordance with the spirit of the zoning ordinance, may not be granted if the variance is for a financial hardship, nor hardship that is personal as to the landowner. Staff recommendation, staff supports granting the variance request to exempt the property from right-of-way sidewalk along Abel Longoria Street.
Just for information purposes, Mr. Ochoa, in looking at the videos and the pictures, it doesn't appear that there's anywhere the resident could build a sidewalk if they wanted to, because you've got the utility easement behind the ditch and the drainage ditch, which they're not allowed to obstruct, correct?
Correct. Approximately the front property line is right behind the utility pole, somewhere in here. So it's likely that it won't leave enough area for the sidewalk to be built. And if so, it'll erode underneath the sidewalk eventually.
Very good. Any other questions for staff before we open the public hearing? This is a public hearing. The public hearing is now open. If there's anyone here to speak for or against this petition or application, please come forward and state your name for the record. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Slackman. I'm sorry, motion by Mr. Slackman, seconded by Mr. Hinojosa. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I know traditionally in cases like this, what we've done, and especially with a street that isn't fully developed and doesn't have curbs and gutters yet, we usually grant a variance to remain in effect until such time. That's the way I'm leaning, but I'm open to discussion on this with the rest of you.
Even if the city were to come in and change how the street's laid out, put in curbs and gutters, I don't see how that, with that swale there, they would be able, a homeowner would be able to put in.
No, if you put in curbs and gutters, you wouldn't need the drainage ditch anymore because you'd have sewer put in.
That's true.
Now, could I just ask a question? I see the mailbox, but then I see that red line that you drew. You said the property line is on the other side of that red line. So technically that mailbox is in the street. But I mean, that's not just the only one. I see
Oh.
a whole slew of them.
Typically, in all subdivisions, all mailboxes are on the right of way. This one, obviously, the street is narrower, so they try to put it as close as possible so they can deliver the mail.
That's why you end up seeing a post office box, a mailbox, covering up nearly all of the sidewalk in a neighborhood.
Well, yes, but in this particular case with the drainage ditch right there, I mean, you know, and if the city wanted to go and widen the street, they would have to.
It will need
Oh, and yeah, they
to
would tear
be
out the
removed.
mailbox. All of those owners would lose their mailboxes, and it would be their own expense to replace it.
Yeah.
Other discussion? I'll entertain a motion to approve a variance and to remain in effect until such time as curbs and gutters might be put in on this street.
I'll make that motion.
It's a motion by Mr. Hinojosa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Mr. Vanderford. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Case number 2019-021-B. Public hearing in action to consider a variance from Chapter 320, Article 2, Sidewalk Facilities, to extend the property from right-of-way sidewalk along North Illinois Avenue for Lot 4, Block 313, El Jardín subdivision, located at 2980 North Illinois Avenue, as requested by Benjamin Garcia. Article 2, Sidewalk Facilities, Section 320-37, subsection 8.2. Sidewalk shall be 4 feet in width and located adjacent and parallel to the property line. Subsection 8.3, if physical constraints require sidewalks to be placed against the back of curb, the width of the sidewalk shall be increased to a minimum of 5 feet. This is an aerial of the property. 200-foot radius. This is a site plan of the construction that was done at this property. One thing to consider, this is the property line right here.
I don't see what you circled in that last picture.
The
With
the
little
property
X's
line
in the
is
bottom left, bottom right.
Oh, okay, I see.
is almost following, you're gonna see the fence, the same fence that is shown here.
Oh, okay.
You have the video?
And what is this facility gonna be, Mr. Ochoa?
It's a church.
Okay.
The video?
Sorry.
I guess this shows better the conditions of also the ditch in front of the property. Grounds for granting a variance, the Board of Adjustments may grant a variance if the variance is not contrary to the public interest due to special conditions, and it's also in accordance with the spirit of the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustments may not grant a variance for financial hardship, nor a hardship that is personal as to the landowner. Staff recommendation, staff supports granting the variance request to exempt the property from right-of-way sidewalk along North Illinois Avenue.
Any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
What's the status of other, by the way, thank you very much for the videos. I
Yes,
find them very interesting, very good. What's the status of other sidewalks along Illinois or otherwise?
It's also rural cut, North Illinois. The difference that you can see between these photos and I guess the video that you just saw is that it hasn't been cleaned in a while, I guess, this drain. And eventually, once it's clean, it's gonna look technically like the one that you previously approved on Abel Longoria. So it's almost the same situation. There
The
is
only
no
difference being a commercial versus a residential.
correct, and there's not enough room. And if it is now available based on that video, eventually once it's clean, it could end up eroding from underneath the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here to speak for or against this application, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Benjamin Garcia, and I'm the acting minister at the Iglesia de Cristo right there by the Port of Brownsville. And the reason why we applied for this variance was basically because of the ditch. I know I am all for sidewalks, but in this particular case, we have the ditch. I know one thing that we need to do is clean it up so that the water can flow more easily through those tunnels and get to the drainage grade that is at the end of the property. So that's basically it.
Any questions for the applicant, ladies and gentlemen?
I have no questions.
Very good. If we have any other questions, we'll recall you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against this application? Any other questions for staff before we close public hearing?
I move that we close public hearing.
It's a motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Vanderford. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Loya. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Same scenario? I'll entertain a motion to approve a variance to remain in effect until such time as the city improves the street and places curbs and gutters.
Also move.
Motion by Mr. Vanderford. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hinojosa. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Case number 2019-22-B, public hearing and action to consider a variance from Chapter 220, Article 2nd, sidewalk facilities to exempt the property from right-of-way sidewalks along Cadell Road for Lot 7, Northwood subdivision located at 5700 Cadell Road, as requested by Consuelo Barbosa Ramirez. Article 2, sidewalk facilities, Section 320-37, subsection A2. Sidewalk shall be 4 feet in width and located adjacent and parallel to the property line. Subsection A3, if physical constraints require sidewalks to be placed against the back of the curb, the width of the sidewalk should be increased to a minimum of 5 feet. This is an aerial of the property, 200-foot radius. This is a survey or a portion of a survey for the same property. Some photos. We have a video. Grounds for granting a variance, the Board of Adjustments may grant a variance if the variance is not contrary to the public interest, due to special conditions, and is in accordance with the spirit of the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustments may not grant a variance for a financial hardship or hardship that is personal as to the landowner. Staff recommendation, staff supports granting the variance request to exempt the property from right-of-way sidewalk along Cadell Road.
Questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
No.
This is a public hearing which is now open. If there's anyone here to speak for or against the application, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Consuelo Barbosa Ramirez. I'm here basically asking the city to exempt the sidewalk because of the reason that we have been petitioning the city to repave our street. Our street is in dire need of repaving, and of course it is undeveloped because it's only basically one car could actually pass through. We need it to be basically fixed, and we also, we don't have sewer in that street. We do obviously have swells for the drainage when it comes down to basically collect like rainwater. We have to basically get rid of the rainwater somehow, so that's why we have swells. But we have been petitioning the city for repaving and obviously for a new street. So it doesn't seem to me proper for me to put a sidewalk there when if hopefully, I'm hoping the city puts in a new street, they're gonna go ahead and knock it down and we're gonna have to do it all over again.
Have you heard back from the city?
I've heard, they tell me that they don't have funds to do our street, but they're hopefully next year, they'll try to at least repave it, because we do have a very bad problem with potholes. When rain obviously comes, the potholes get real bad there. And they just say that they don't have funds for our street at all.
And if the city were to go in at some point and completely redo the road, put in sewage for you and drainage, at that point you guys would be willing to put in a sidewalk?
I would gladly do it,
Very good.
but I need the street
Of course.
to put their part in it. I've been actually calling the city. They know my name already, so it's been that bad. And I obviously have people that back me up.
Very good.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
We'll call you back if you need anything else. Anyone else who'd like to speak for or against this request?
Hi, I'm Terry Galvan, I'm her neighbor. Just to back her up and repeat what she said, we've, actually our subdivision is just on one side of the street, it's only 10 lots. On either side of those 10 lots are just other properties, there's no subdivisions. Across the street is a huge field, I mean, there's not just field, it's farming is what it is. So it's really not even developed like she said. And we've been annexed to the city since 1997, I believe. And we got water 5 years, maybe 5 years ago. We still don't have sewers. So, you know, putting a sidewalk in was just kind of, you know, moot. I mean, there's really no reason to put sidewalks in. I don't know where her sidewalk's going to go. You know, it's just going to be a sidewalk there in front of her house. And that's all. I just wanted to back her up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak for or against this petition? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jose Armando Garza. I'm also a neighbor in that neighborhood. And basically the same thing. I've been living there for 3 years. It's a beautiful part of the city, but the street is the only thing that is basically lowering the value of our properties. I know tax season is around the corner. All of us paying our taxes, but the street is the bad part of the thing. It wouldn't make sense to have a very nice sidewalk in front of the street. So that's my concern.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else who'd like to speak for or against this petition? Any other questions for staff before we close the public hearing?
I move to close public hearing.
The motion by Mr. Slackman to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Vanderford. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And I'll remind everyone, I don't think everybody was on the board at the time. I know there was another property on this road at the end of the road that we approved a variance for exactly like this not too long ago.
I'll make the same motion as we did for the other two variances, so.
Variance to remain into effect until such time as there are curbs and gutters put in.
At which time the applicant would gladly put a sidewalk in.
There is a motion by Mr. Hinojosa. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Motion's by Mr. Hinojosa, second by Mr. Slackman. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you all for coming.
Case number 2019-23-B, public hearing and action to consider a variance from Chapter 348, Article 7, Section 348-1531, signs and billboards, to allow a pole sign at Lot 26 and parts of Lot 25, Brownsville Land and Improvement Company subdivision located at 1215 Central Boulevard, as requested by Larry Douglas, lighting and sign. Section 348-1531, signs and billboards. Subsection H, prohibited signs. The following types of signs shall be prohibited within the historical district. However, any sign designated as a contributing sign or structure by the historic preservation officer shall not be prohibited unless or until such designation is revoked. Subsection 7, pole signs. This is an aerial of the property. 200-foot radius. This is a portion of a survey of the property of the two lots. That's the proposed location of the pole sign. These are photos of the new construction going on in this property. We have a video. Grounds for granting a variance, the Board of Adjustments may grant a variance if the variance is not contrary to the public interest, is due to special conditions, and is in accordance with the spirit of the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustments may not grant a variance for a financial hardship, nor a hardship that is personal as to the landowner.
Mr. Ochoa, I did not get the ordinance in my packet. Could you put it up again? Can we go over it slowly, please?
The ordinance, I'm sorry?
Yes, sir.
The section?
Yeah. That's, all right. What is contributing? Well, I assume in this case, the officer, the preservation officer, did not declare this as contributing, but what does it mean?
Contributing means anything that will assist in making a historical district historical. So if it is a property or structure, a sign that has been around for quite some time, that is a contributing structure to the historical district, to the historical means of a home or a building.
So based on that definition, it sounds like any new sign wouldn't qualify.
No,
Probably not. Like,
that is correct. It would not qualify.
for instance, perhaps an old gasoline station sign.
Yeah.
Period to the building or something of that nature might be contributing to the historical.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have seen in some of the bigger buildings here in downtown, like the Samano building, as a sign on the side of the building. That will be a contributing sign. It's been there for almost the same existence
Since
of
the
the
building
building, so.
And the same thing happens with homes. A home may have been built in the 1920s, 1930s, but nobody of historical significance may have lived there. But it's just been around for that long that it is a contributing structure to the historical area or, or aesthetic of the neighborhood.
I guess my question that I have is, because when I was reading in the package, it stated that the historical district starts at this point and ends at another point, and this building is like basically straddling it.
Yes. Central Boulevard is split in half.
Okay.
That portion of Central Boulevard that this property is located on is the very edge of the historical district. Anything within the historical district requires permission from the Historic Preservation and Design Review Board to paint, to do repairs, anything pretty much that could affect the contributing factors of a building, whether it is of historical significance, whether it has a designation or not.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand that point, but now you're recommending disapproval of this because it is in the historical
We-
district.
We haven't gotten to that slide,
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, what is the staff's recommendation?
staff recommendation, staff does not support granting the variance request to allow a pole sign. Staff hasn't been unable to establish grounds for granting a variance.
Let me ask a couple of questions. The first, when we're talking about a pole sign, is it specifically just a sign on top of a pole? But if somebody were to build something that's had a big base and went up, like kind of what the hospital has, catty corner to this area, where it's not a pole that has a sign on it, but it's a big obelisk, for lack of a better term, that has all their information and stuff on it, would something like that be allowed under the ordinance as written?
Monument signs have limits.
A height limit?
The height and the width, so that will still be considered a ground sign. It's not the same as a pole sign, but it's very similar. It's not a monument sign
So
anymore.
the property owner here would not be able to achieve the height they want, even if they left the pole out and went with a different type of construction,
Correct.
correct?
I'm assuming the monument sign is lower than the 25 feet.
Yes, sir.
The allowable monument sign.
Now, my other question, if we approve this, it still needs to go in front of the historical commission, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we approve it and they say no, then the answer is going to be no, is that correct?
Well, that's the reason why it's
The-
here.
Yeah, the historic ordinance, anything within the historic overlay does not allow a pole sign. The reason that this is before you today is because you just decide yes or no. If you decide yes to allow a pole sign at this location, then the Historic Preservation and Design Review Board would be the ones to dictate what it looks like, what color scheme. There is limits on the amount of signage that can go for every property. So for example, if they're it's a Dollar Tree, I believe, if the Dollar Tree sign on the facade of the building already takes up that total square footage that is allowed, then their pole sign is gonna be pretty much non-existent. So the Historic Preservation Officer would calculate the size of the sign that would be allowed to be put there, just to be to follow their ordinance requirements. So today, the Board of Adjustment is here to decide yes to allow it or no not to allow it.
But to follow up on what Mr. Hinojosa said, if we approve it, can the Historical Society disapprove it, in effect overriding us, or are they just going to set limits?
No,
You're
they-
just approving the pole sign, the actual pole, the height, the pole. Like, as Mirna said already, they're still gonna regulate the size or the area of the entire signage in the property, including the wall sign and the sign that they plan to place on top of this pole.
Yeah, if we approve, a pole sign is allowed, but the historic preservation can dictate what it looks like.
That was my-
Aesthetics, color scheme, all that stuff,
So in the end, it may be a moot point.
potentially.
You,
Question,
you're just approving the type of sign.
right?
The Historic Preservation Board cannot go against the Board of Adjustment as you are a quasi-judicial board, correct? So you say yes or no, and then they have to work with that along with the applicant to figure out the size of the sign that's gonna be on the building as well as the sign that's gonna be out on the street, if it is approved by you all.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was getting at. Thank you.
And Mr. Ochoa, I have another question. This building's already constructed, so when the plans were submitted and permits issued for this building, was there any signage provided for in the plans?
That's a different application. It doesn't include the sign.
Okay. So even if it's a different application, were there no signs on the plans aside from what's on the building?
There may have been, but they're not reviewed at that time for the construction and issuance of the building permit.
How do we communicate that to an applicant?
It's actually
It's part of their packet in writing?
of our comment letter, because in most cases, they don't know that, and they include it on the architectural plans, including details and everything. But we let them know that they have to submit a separate package for that, including the application is different.
Okay.
May I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Could that sign be, would this be moot if that sign, if the store was on the other side of the street?
It would be moot.
It would be moot. Okay.
If you
So-
looked in the video, there was several on the
Yeah.
other side of the street.
Yeah, well, I know, I was noticing
Water-
that.
Whataburger.
So I guess well, I mean, they can actually construct that sign without any problem on the other side of the street with the sign pointing that way.
Maybe they should.
They
hire you.
actually can't.
I mean, I'm just saying, you know.
Other questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Very good. This is a public hearing. It is now open. If anyone would like to speak on this petition, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Lady?
Gentlemen, my name is Larry Douglas. I am the owner-operator of Larry Douglas Lighting and Signs. We are here to ask for a variance on this due to the fact that this one lot is the only thing that's in the 11 overlaid district. And when you go across the street of Lakeside, there is a pole sign. You go another lot up toward Walgreens, they have a 35-foot sign on that same side of Central Boulevard, which also, just as a reminder, this is Business Highway 77. And we feel that it's unfair. I'm not here to debate why this one little lot is in the historical district, but as across the street, as we mentioned, we have Burger King, we have Whataburger that are 40 feet. Catty Corner across also is their direct competitor is Dollar General. The video wasn't very good about the placement of where that sign is we want to have put there. It's going to comply with all the sign ordinances that are in effect at this present time. It is not in the right-of-way, it is not in the power easement, and the other part of the sign ordinance says that setbacks must be 10 feet from every property line. And since there's two property lines on that corner where we want to put it, we are in that correct area. We're out of the 10 feet. And so all we're asking, we're not, it's just nothing special. We're just trying to be with what everybody else is on Business 77. There is some obstructions that they cannot see the building, so they won't be able to see the sign on the building coming from Walgreens from Boca Chica. There's a bunch of overgrown trees and whatnot that is not their property. So people are going to be flying by and not be able to see this building because the driveway for that building is closer to that alleyway or closer to the Walgreens. So, and this is all we're asking, is to have a free and fair, business way of the rest, like everybody else has got on the same block. I can understand if that whole block on that one side was in the historical district, I could see that. But when we got, signs that are no more than 100 feet away, that pharmacy that's right there, and they have a freestanding sign. We call them freestanding signs. Pole signs, monument signs, it really doesn't make any difference to us, basically, in the industry. It's a freestanding sign. It's not attached to the building. So I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
I understand this might not be fair because you don't work for Family Dollar, but before Family Dollar or whatever the
Dollar Tree.
parent company is that built this retail outlet, didn't they know this?
Well,
I guess my reaction is, well, let's do it and then we'll worry about it later.
Well, that's not what happened.
Tell me what happened.
We applied for permits. They applied this building along with all of the signage that was on the prints. These prints were approved. Then when I came to get a permit to do the installation, for about 2 months, they were going, okay, everything's fine, this looks great, this is good, this is good. And then when I walked into the office to get it, that's when everything just fell apart. That's when he tells me, oh, we just now know. And this is staff. And this is what's kind of aggravating with staff that's sitting here, because I was told in that meeting that we were having till 6:30 at night that staff was going to approve this. Because they knew the situation. They knew they didn't do us right. Because we were not given the stuff that he claims it was. And that's the confusion that I have, because I'm getting all these different answers from here and there and there. And when a print is in for permitting and to be approved, the whole thing gets approved. But now they're trying to tell us that, oh, no, it's a separate deal. We were never told that until today when he just said it. Even in the meeting that I had with all of the department, all they could do is quote me the law, which said, overlay 11, no pole signs. And that's where they stood. But the gentleman, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, he's from Spain. That's part of the
Mr.
historical-
Juan Velez, the Historic Preservation Officer.
He was there in this meeting. He assured me that this sign met all the criteria except being in the overlay district. And that's all we're asking is for fairness, because we were not treated right. And it's not because I work for Dollar Tree. It's because we were not told for months of how this was going to go down until the last minute. They approved, gave me a permit to do the installation of the building signs, no problem. And this is what I'm asking.
Thank
lady.
you, thank you, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Ochoa, you want to make any comment?
Quick question for Mr. Douglas before you step away. Did you say you had a permit issued for the sign?
They had sent me an email stating the fact that there was no problem with this freestanding sign. And until I came down, I'm out of San Antonio. We had driven down here, the pole, the pipe is sitting on the lot because they told me everything was fine, come in, pay the fee. And it wasn't until the last second when he told me, oh, we have a problem. So I drove 4 hours, I spent $2,500 on a piece of pipe, and it's sitting in a yard because the city staff did not do their job. Because their job is to help the public, no matter what. And I don't understand why, we have to hide or we don't know or, that type of deal. If not, we would probably be here months earlier.
Who sent you that email?
Mr. Vega.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Vega?
Mr. Ochoa,
Martin Vega.
since Mr. Douglas referred to you, if you'd like to comment, please go ahead. You don't have to, but you may.
Don't know exactly if Mr. Douglas submitted a separate application or what point he came on board for this project. It's been the practice in our department that we separate the application of the sign and any other, for example, a swimming pool, separate from the application from the main structure or the main construction. We typically, during our review, we tell the applicant, whoever it is, if it is the general contractor, if it is the architect, during our comment letters, that the other structures or sign needs to be submitted separately. And what I'm hearing right now is that if we already issue a permit for the wall sign, that means that it already went before the Historic Preservation and Review Board, and maybe they just approved the wall signs pending the
Variance.
the variance, whether it was going to be approved for a pole sign or not. That's what could have happened. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't know about this situation, but that's all I can.
Thank you.
If I can add something to that, apart from Board of Adjustment and Building and Standards, I assisted with historic preservation for quite some time. I remember when Dollar Tree, sorry, I apologize. Dollar Tree came in the very, very first time as a public comment. I don't recall his name, he was very thin and tall, the gentleman who came in, he presented to them, and they did let him know at that time, you know, whatever you're doing here, whenever you present to us, just know that that's not allowed. And I remember they had discussed it, and then they came back in a second time, actually as an item for consideration, or for action to be taken on it, and that's when it was approved through the Historic Preservation Board.
Including the sign?
Not the pole sign, because that is not allowed
They also had
as
to,
the, but the colors, everything else, yes, pole sign, no.
they also had to go before the board for approval of the entire construction of the building. Like Martin said, the design, the location of the building. And I believe that was one of the reasons why they were here initially, under a public comment. There was some issues with a driveway that they wanted to do around the building. And
Vegetation as well was also. an issue.
Nonetheless, Mr. Douglas has stated that he did submit some kind of paperwork that had the sign on it that was approved.
the wall sign by the historic
All right,
preservation.
so there's a disagreement there.
No, and I think where some of the confusion might be also is that from projects that I'm familiar with, when they submit plans, they've got everything on it. And it may be that the city, we're looking at the building and the structure and the setbacks, we're not considering the other things yet. When we're saying, okay, this is approved, the applicant may not understand that the approval is specific to this and not to that. And I understand if we're talking about that during a review, if it's just verbal, I can totally see where there would be confusion.
It isn't. We must have some record, either via email or in a comment letter to either the architect or general contractor. Probably Mr. Douglas came after that, but sometime we must have told him it's a separate application. It's always been a separate application, including other
I'm sorry.
other construction, like for example, swimming pools in an apartment complex. They also included, it is shown on the plans, but it is not approved when the set of plans is.
Well, you're saying that you must have done it, but meanwhile, we have a disagreement, so. You're saying that you must have done it, but
It's what I only can tell you.
it's routine and you must have done it.
It's part of the process,
But
yes.
it's part of the process, exactly, but whether it was
I cannot-
done in this case or not.
I cannot 100%
All
guarantee.
right, thank you, sir.
The same process, last month, we had another pole sign, the same process
Yeah.
that was taken with that pole sign, because it was also within the historic district, was taken with this property. We will not approve something that goes against an ordinance without putting it in writing. Anytime that there is something that is against ordinance, for example, anything that comes to the Board of Adjustment, whether it is approved or denied, there is a letter that is sent out to them in writing, signed by our building official, stating the date that the action was taken, sent to the property owner, sent to the representative as well. And so I can say that any pole sign would not be approved by the Historic Preservation Board because it is not allowed by ordinance, and the only board that can do that is the Board of Adjustment.
There's been a lot of referral here by both Mr. Douglas and the city to paperwork and documents, and in the future, everybody should be bringing their paperwork and documents. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I never received an email denial. That never happened. I don't have one. The only person that I've been speaking with is Martin Vega. And like I
Now,
told
who
you,
is that man?
Martin Vega is our senior planner for the department.
Do you have that email by any chance with you?
I looked, I don't have it right off the top of my head. And I apologize, but I mean, I don't have one that said that I was denied. What I had was a letter sent to me, or an email sent to me by him stating that he only needed two little things to finish up the approval on this freestanding sign.
And your work on this project is exclusive to the sign, correct?
Yes.
You weren't the contractor that built the
No, sir.
building?
I am the sign contractor. And
Again.
I'm sorry.
No, finish.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, again, we appreciate there's a disagreement, and again, I recommend to everybody in the future, to please bring documentation. Thank you.
Okay. And just to reiterate, we're just looking for fairness here, because there's nothing special in that area for, for not approving a pole sign, because there's pole signs or freestanding signs up and down the street at this particular location.
I will say, the structure located directly behind the new construction is a contributing building to the historical district. That is a reason why there is what was suggested originally as a 10-foot buffer. I believe that they brought it down to 6 or 8 feet of vegetation between the property line of the red and white house that is right behind the new construction. It is a contributing structure. It is a historical neighborhood, as well as the elementary school and the 2 houses between that contributing structure and the elementary school.
When we're talking about that structure, we're talking about residential?
It's the Dollar Tree. There is a residence that is right behind the Dollar Tree that is a contributing structure to the historical district. There are 3 more residences, or 2 more residences, and then Russell Elementary. Russell Elementary has been around for over 100 years. That is also a contributing structure.
And all of those front on Lakeside?
That's on Lakeside Boulevard. It is a historical neighborhood. So that I will say that one property behind it, that is the reason that the Historic Preservation Officer requested a certain width of buffer between the contributing residents and the new construction.
And just to add, this sign is out on the street. It's not, it's, probably a little over 100 feet to the back wall of that residence. Plus, there's a line of palm trees that are at 20-some odd feet tall or more that line that whole deal. Plus, we already have a building that is, built, was approved, built. It has what we call wall packs, security lighting that are on the back. They're probably going to be diffused a little bit. Our sign itself, the internally lit sign is lit by LED. So even at property line, this sign is not going to illuminate more than 1 foot candle of illumination. So it's not going to be a distress to any people that are 100 some odd feet away or not. So again, I hope y'all pass this. I really do.
Let me ask you a question. Is it just like a finger type that this property that we're talking about? Are there buildings on the same side where his property, the property is, that is not in historical district?
Yes.
That have signs?
Yep.
It's
Yes.
just like,
Yeah,
okay.
this is only one lot that this historical district extends into up to Central Boulevard. And again, across the street on Lakeside, there's a freestanding sign for the pharmacist that's there. And then one lot over on the same side, because then it stops at that alley. That's where that historical overlay stops. Then we have, close to a 40-foot Walgreens sign.
Yeah.
That's right there. So,
Other questions for staff or the applicant? And I believe we have someone else in the audience who'd like to comment on this application?
No.
Come forward. You'd have to come forward and state your name for the record, Mr. Loya.
I grew up in this area.
First name for the record.
Manuel Loya.
Thank you.
I grew up in this area 64 years now. The historical, I don't know if it's historical, but till today, but the buildings behind the Dollar Tree are houses, but they're businesses. It's a doctor, no?
The first one is not. The one
second one's
next
a
to it
doctor?
is a dietitian,
Okay.
and then there's 2 more structures.
So does it matter if it's a business or not already, or not? Does it
No.
affect the historical?
No, it does
No?
not.
Okay, that's all I was, maybe there was a little.
Yeah, no, the dietitian that is there, that structure is new, or it was renovated, so that is not contributing.
But they held the historical facade?
No, that's not the structure that I'm talking about. That's right next to the contributing building that is right behind the Dollar Tree. It's a red and white
Some
building.
of them. It's an old area.
That's residential?
That's a residence, yes.
This is the business.
And then there's a.
And then
two-story
there's a business, and then there's a two-story one, and then there's a one-story one, and then there's a two-story home on the corner, right across the street from
Yeah.
Russell Elementary.
So the historical district, and it's like a peninsula?
Mr. Ochoa,
No, it encompasses that small
Might be
area.
easier to just
if
show
you,
up
if you
on the
put this
area.
up, you could,
Yeah.
it might be easier.
If you just put this slide up, you can show it on that.
Any other questions? Or anyone else? No one else in the audience? Any other questions for staff or the applicant before we close the public hearing? I'll entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Vanderford, second by Mr. Slackman to close the public hearing. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. So the first thing we have to look at here is we have to have something, if we were inclined to grant the variance, there must be a hardship that we could hang our hat on before we can exercise our latitude as a board in what we would apply. I didn't see any height specifications that we're considering tonight. Is that correct? We're just talking about a pole sign, not specifically height?
That's correct.
Well, hardship-wise, I'm willing to accept that there's a chance that we have a disagreement here, and the client may not be wrong in his being led to believe that they could proceed. I mean, the man bought a pole that's sitting in the lot, so he obviously was under some assumption that he could put the pole up. So I don't want to discount that, and that could be part of a hardship consideration.
No, I agree with him, because, he has, this is all supposition, I guess, but, an email from, one of our guys in the planning saying, yeah, see, he loads up
Potential.
well, I know, but he loads up a pole,
Wait.
drives all.
Mr. Hinojosa, we have no evidence of that. We've
Well, I
got
know that.
testimony,
I
but
know
we have
that.
no
I mean,
evidence
that's
of that.
why I preface it by that. I mean, I can see that kind of a hardship, though. But that just.
Other thoughts?
Well, again, we don't have the evidence, but
If I
I
may-
don't want to discount it
Sure,
as
Mr.
not being accurate.
You may want it to table, and we can bring evidence, including this email, but staff communication shouldn't be something that
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily create. the
create
hardship.
the hardship for this approval.
I think for me, when I look at this, and I've looked at the map of the district, and I'm looking at Central Boulevard specifically, and this is a commercial corridor, Central Boulevard, and I understand the contributing structures in the back in the residential area. I understand that completely, and normally I wouldn't be inclined to grant something because someone is on the edge or the boundary line, because the boundary line has to be somewhere. But in this case in particular, my concern is that it horseshoes back around. So that if you're looking at Central Boulevard, there are properties south of these properties that are outside the district and signs are allowed, properties north that are outside the district and signs are allowed, and everything across the street, same thing. And to me, that does create a unique condition for what we're looking at here.
I agree.
And because that unique condition exists, I know I'm comfortable hanging my hat on that there is a unique condition here that we could grant a variance if we were so inclined.
And I agree with the chairman, and I also want to state that we all have perceptions of what a historical district should look like, and it should be preserved, and the importance of it to cities. And yet they granted the building of a Dollar Tree. And I'm not, saying that that's not a fair structure there, but it's a Dollar Tree in the middle of a historical district, horseshoed around by other. So it belies the historical aspect to some extent, and then say, well, you can have a Dollar Tree, but you can't have a pole. There's some little contradiction to me in that.
The appearance of the building could have been changed. I mean, obviously, it's still going to be a store, but appearance, colors, height, materials used on the exterior are regulated by that board, so.
Do we know if anything was changed? Because it looks pretty consistent with what other Dollar Trees looks like.
There
think
were
that-
samples that were submitted, there was a swatch, and all of those things were approved by the Historic Preservation Office. It's the same thing that happens whenever a new home is being built. They try to avoid brick buildings, they recommend hardy plank, California siding, things of that nature to stick with it. But
I
yes,
think the applicant even said they changed some of the vegetation to comply with the historical district, so I see.
just think to Mr. Slackman's point, we're talking about, it doesn't look like it was designed or built to be a historic looking building. It looks
No.
like a Dollar Tree.
Yeah, I apologize for repeating myself, but to say this is a historical district, you could build a Dollar Tree, but you can't have a pole. I'm having a difficulty with that.
Yes, sir.
And then, well,
Any other comments? I'm comfortable moving forward with granting the variance as requested. I'll entertain a motion.
I will make that motion to grant approval of this variance.
Motion by Mr. Hinojosa, is there a second?
I'll second it.
We'll give that one to Mr. Slackman. Second by Mr. Slackman. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Just for the record, if you could include the
the hardship.
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned it when I made my case. I mean, the hardship is that there is a unique situation created here because the way the district is drawn, the district lines are drawn, it kind of comes back in a horseshoe type fashion. So it allows for commercial properties south of him on Central Boulevard and north of him and everything across the street to do what he's not allowed to do based on the current zoning. And so because that condition is unique to this property and not the other properties north or south of him or across the street from him, there's a unique situation, and I think that's what allows us to grant a variance if we want to. It doesn't mean we have to grant a variance. I think that just creates the opportunity for us to exercise our judgment.
Makes sense to me.
I agree.
Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, sir.
So we are approved.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Now, the other details as far as aesthetic, dimensions, things like that, so I think it still has to go through historic preservation
Yes.
for
and-
all those things, but a pole sign is allowed. You are approved for a pole sign.
So you will now need to speak with Mr. Juan Velez, who is the Historic Preservation Officer. We can let him know on Monday when we head into the office that this was approved, and that way he can have a discussion with you as to what specifications will be required.
Because he verbally, he approved it while we were in the meeting. Mr. Martin was there too. And I know we're not in a public hearing, but just as information, that email that I was talking about from Mr. Martin was sent to me on July 31st, 2019, which he went on about how the signs are going to be done. He talked about the wall sign, and then on the pole sign itself, he said all he needed was a schematic drawing of the electrical components of the sign, and that the sign, that because it at 25 feet, that I had to have an engineered drawing to back it up.
If you'll do me a favor and get staff's email addresses and forward that to them, that way they can look at it, and if there was anything that we made mistakes on, we can ensure we correct them in the future.
Because the only thing that I'm saying, and it's nothing against you, okay? Because I know that you probably don't know all the back channels that are going on, but this was poorly done by staff. And I go all over the state of Texas. I do the Dollar Trees, I do Pizza Huts, I do Long John Silver's. So, and I've dealt with all of this for years. I've been in business since 1991. So I know how this works. But staff stumbled on some of these things. And it wasn't, and like I said, it wasn't fair to me or to my customer. Because, but I appreciate that you all have seen that and have granted us this deal. So, thank you very much.
And thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Mr.
your
Douglas.
understanding and your assistance, Mr. Douglas. All right, next item, discussion and possible action items. Discussion and possible action to set a training date for the Board of Adjustment members.
Yes, we have
For
new.
Lizette?
We have new board members and reappointed board members, and so we would need to do the training again. I would like to have it done with everybody. We have a new legal team, and I think that we can get some better guidance on hardships and rules that we should really be following, and just everything in general, cover everything all over again. So if I would like to have something, I know Mr. Metzger is currently out of town. I don't think he'll be back until November. So I would like to have something within the next month or so, maybe before November. And if anyone has any, you'll be out of town or something's gonna be happening, let me know. Or we can set a date today.
Well, throw out a date. Let's do something there.
What day of the week are we considering? Does staff have a recommendation? Because I know you guys have other boards you're tied to also.
Preferably in the afternoon, so that way everybody can make it. I know Ms. Loya is preoccupied during the day, people can't get out of work, so it would need to be in the afternoon.
You mean after 5?
After 5, yes, sorry,
Okay.
after 5. If maybe by the end of September we can get something going, I would prefer maybe like the 24th.
What day of the week is that, please?
That is a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
That works for me.
Tuesdays are bad for me. I'm sorry.
They're bad for you?
All Tuesdays.
Okay. What other days are, any
Any
trips?
of the other 6.
Okay, I'm throwing out
Wednesdays,
dates here, Mr.
Fridays.
Slack.
No, I'm sorry, I run a meeting on Tuesday afternoons.
Okay.
So any other day,
Okay, how about the 25th?
that's fine.
No?
That works for me.
That's fine.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, the
Okay,
25th.
no, sorry, that's not gonna work.
Oh.
Not be it? Okay, so how about the third week of September or the first week of October?
That's fine.
Depends on which day on the third week. I know I've got a board meeting, so does Mr. Vanderford and Mrs. Loya on Wednesday of that week. The 18th, we're not available.
Okay, is the 19th?
Well, how about the 2nd of October?
We're supposed to be here.
We're supposed to be here.
Oh, duh. I thought that sounded familiar.
So
What
the
about the
19th?
9th of October? Would that work for everybody?
That works for me.
Okay,
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm fine with that.
okay.
So the 9th or the 19th, let's make sure that when Ms. Diaz can attend, since she's the only one who's not been through any
Okay.
training at all for this board.
I would prefer the 9th, and then that way it gives us more time to
That works.
get everything ready.
I can't do the 19th, but.
Okay, the 9th works.
So October 9th? Can we take action on it?
I'll entertain a motion to schedule a training for Board of Adjustments members for Wednesday, October 9th, 2019 at 5:30 PM?
At 5:30 PM.
Location to be announced.
Yes.
Very good.
Also move.
Motion by Mr. Vanderford, is there a second?
Not me.
Second by Mr. Hinojosa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item 9, discussion and possible action to establish an attendance policy for Board of Adjustment members as established by the board appointment policy approved by Brownsville City Commission on October 2nd, 2018.
This is something that we do not have in our rules of procedure, and I think that because we are starting new again with new board members, this would be a great time to implement all of the requirements that are set forth by the board appointment policy. For this, I just said attendance, because I think that's the only thing that kind of happens here. But if at any time we decide to move on and just follow everything that is within that, we can also, we can add that to an agenda at the next meeting. And so this is just action to begin amendments to the rules of procedure to include an attendance policy.
Well, can we add the amendment today?
No, because it hasn't been
No.
presented in writing yet for the record.
Yes, so this is just to start the process.
And here are my thoughts on this item, though, because my first big concern is that the board appointment policy is just a policy. And we have seen city commission abuse that before in trying to make changes without having to hold a public hearing like they do for ordinance changes, and rewriting policies that contradict ordinance and then letting credence to the policy. I have a big concern about that. My other concern with something like this is that we're not like other boards because we're quasi-judicial. I think the remedy, if there are attendance issues, are already in place. If somebody's missing too many meetings, the city council can absolutely have a hearing and say, we're dismissing you for cause because you've missed too many meetings. I don't think there's a requirement that it be in our policy. And I would worry that if it were put in our policies, then again, there could be a play on it. Well, your policies say you're off the board now officially because you've missed 3 meetings, even though it doesn't follow statute, which says you can only be removed for cause and there must be a hearing if the member wants it. Because the way the policy reads, the board appointment policy, it sounds like it's automatic. Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
It says it's
It
automatic.
says it's automatic, which contradicts statute. So I would not support putting language like that into our rules of procedure. I think remedies for attendance issues are already in place.
Well, I disagree. I'm not going to worry about the statute at the moment. If this is the city policy, I think we should mirror the city policy in our board as all boards, and I would have no problem picking up the wording. It's 2 sentences here. I'd pick up this wording and put it right in our procedures and regulations for our board, just as it is. I don't have any problem with it. If it's a violation of statute, I'll let our legal team worry about that.
How does legal feel about that? About us adopting a policy that says if I miss 3 meetings in a row, my resignation's automatic?
Which is what the city says.
Even though statute says I'm entitled to a hearing?
If the statute says you're entitled to a hearing, that trumps ordinance, and that would trump a policy, and that would trump your bylaws.
All right, then,
So-
can you check that, please?
I don't-
If the
I
statute
don't
says.
have to, oh, if the statute says, the
You could-
statute does say that.
It does.
Yes, it
Absolutely,
does.
yeah.
So,
But if you continue reading on the commissioners, the city commission's board attendance, it says if it does not conflict with state law or statute. I remember reading it somewhere on the policy, I just don't remember where it says that.
Yeah, and if we were a board where it didn't contradict statute, I would have no objection to putting it in our policies, but because it does contradict statute which governs our board, I don't think it
I
makes sense
certainly
to
see
put
how
in
it
our
can
rules.
apply to an advisory board.
Absolutely.
But I don't see the harm in taking what the statute says and putting that in your policy, so that there's some type of attendance, because people have, like Mr. Slackman, he's been on the board for a while, and he just asked if that was in statute. So if it were in the policy, your bylaws, perhaps that,
Well, and adopting language like that to reflect statute, I think that's a good
Correct.
idea. I don't
As
think
long
there's
as it-
anything in statute about attendance. It's just
right,
about
but
can be dismissed
in,
for cause.
in regard, right. You could, in regard to the attendance issue policy that Myrna has raised, you could put something in your policy that says if a board member misses 1, 2 meetings, they should have a public hearing at that point with, the city commission. Do you see what I'm saying? So you're entitled to your due process right in regard to what the statute says to have your public hearing. But you guys could implement something stating that if your board member failed to appear for 2 consecutive meetings with an unexcused absence, at that point in time, you would recommend that the city commission have a public hearing to remove that person from your board.
we could set the standards.
Recommend.
And, we could set the standards, and then, once, if it is violated, then the statute kicks in.
Right, as long as the public hearing is held in regard to the individual being heard by city commission, if they choose to enforce that, that's the other clause, if I remember correctly from what the statute says.
Right.
But, this is something that what we could do is we could get something drafted to see what everybody could submit something in regard to what type of bylaw you would like to see in regard to an attendance policy that falls in line with what the statute says, and put that in your bylaws or procedures.
Are we going to write that, or are you going to write that?
I'll work on some language.
That's fine. If you're going to, though, make a statement about alternates. Whether in or out, I don't care. But let's not ignore all of our alternates. Let's make a statement. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I'm comfortable with all of the language. If you're missing X number of meetings, consecutive, unexcused, I'm comfortable with all of that. The only reservation I have is the resignation being automatic. That's where I think the conflict really is with statute, my
Could
opinion.
be
Are
a,
you saying resignation or termination? Because there's a difference.
I thought the language said resignation.
The the commission policy has specific language for resignation, it has
Well,
specific
all right,
language
I'll
for
read what it says.
termination.
I apologize, Jennifer.
No, that's fine.
If they have 3 consecutive unexcused absences, shall be automatically deemed to have resigned.
Okay,
And that's my concern, is I wouldn't be comfortable with that in our rules of procedure. I think if we put something in there that say if you've missed 3 unexcused consecutive, then the board can forward a recommendation to the city commission
Exactly.
that the member be removed for cause. That I'm totally comfortable with, and then the statutory rights kick in.
By majority vote.
Yes. Unless we want to raise the standard, that would completely be up to us.
Okay.
But you are gonna include the alternates.
Yes.
In that language, because.
We'll just need to tailor it so that we're not talking about alternates having to come to every meeting.
I don't
Right.
remember that the statute applies to
alternates.
alternates.
It may.
I'm
No, but-
trying to remember, and I
But
don't.
I don't think it does, but for our procedures, I'm asking the chairman to make some language.
That's
And it
specific.
has to be very flexible, because alternates are called 10 minutes before the meeting sometimes, so it has to be very flexible. But nonetheless, we have alternates, we have 2, 3, 4 alternates. I don't think they should be ignored in the language. I'm asking if he could consider wording.
Okay.
And I can do that. Cool. Other discussion? Do we want any official action on this, that we're going to move forward with it? Or are we good with the discussion we've had?
I think we're fine.
I think we're fine.
Okay, very good. Then we'll work on some language for our next meeting. That way we can get it on the record and then
Fine.
vote on it at the following, I think have first reading, and then we'll have second reading and approval the following month.
Fine.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hinojosa, motion to adjourn by Mr. Hinojosa. Is there a second?
Second.
Then,
There you
okay,
go.
Any
there you go.
objection?
No.
Meeting is adjourned. 6:52.